Welcome to IRS Problem Solvers. Today's session is designed to make IRS communications less intimidating. You don't need to be tax experts to make the right first steps. How many of you ever received a letter from the IRS and then thought, oh no, what did I do? Our primary goal today is to help you respond intelligently when that IRS letter arrives. What's the first thing you usually do when you get a letter that you don't understand? Think about it. Today's presentation is brought to you by the Delaware Money School and DCREC's Low Income Taxpayer Clinic, where we provide free legal assistance to those that qualify to have their IRS problems solved. After today or the session, you should be able to answer these 5 questions. Why did I get this letter? What does the IRS want? When do I have to respond by? What should I do? Do I need help? If you get an IRS letter tonight or tomorrow or next week or next month, which of these questions would matter the most to you? IRS letter doesn't mean an audit or accusation of wrongdoing. Take a deep breath. Don't panic, but don't put it away either. What are some things that folk would be worried about when they get that IRS letter? That the IRS might take my home, they might put me in jail, they might garnish my wages, or that I have done something wrong, or something else. Know that there is a long process before you don't lose your house, but before a lien is placed on your house. You aren't put in jail unless there is criminal activity. You could have done something wrong, maybe filed an incorrect return or not filed on time. Certainly, there is a possibility that you could be audited. But the bottom line is, don't panic. Take a deep breath. Remember, receiving a letter does not automatically mean all of these things. Why did I get a letter? A few common reasons could be that you did not file a return. You filed a return, there might be a balance that is due and you didn't pay, or you got a letter from the IRS notifying you that you owe money. You could get a letter saying that the refund you expected is going toward something else, adjusting maybe last year's balance due, or that your refund is being adjusted. You might get a letter saying verify who you are. You could be getting a letter saying your return is being audited, or that your return was audited and you need to provide additional information. Or you filed a return, but some information is missing. There's a math error in your return and we have fixed it. Collection activity. That IRS has begun the process of collecting monies owed to the IRS. If you are not sure why you got that letter, open that letter, read it carefully. Every IRS letter contains these important pieces of information. A notice number or a letter number, the tax year that is being questioned, dates by which your responses are due. If there is an amount due, how much is due, and a IRS phone number. Which of these 6 pieces of information would you look for first? If I got that letter, I'd look at everything but the date that I would calendar would be the response deadline. The biggest mistake is ignoring the IRS letter. Basically, the biggest mistake in communication is ignoring any communication. I usually say even junk mail, open it, look at it, and then shred it. IRS letter certainly needs to be opened. We all know that IRS works on a timely basis. We know April 15th is our tax filing deadline. Letters that come from IRS notify you of those deadlines. Incredibly important. Ignoring the IRS notice letter communication could cause more penalties, interest that keeps accruing, a simple error that could be fixed on time becomes huge. A collection action that begins and is unaddressed can end in tax court, or you could be stuck with what IRS says you owe. You could lose your rights to appeal. You could lose your right to go to tax court. They say a stitch in time saves 9. Responding to that IRS letter in time will save you time, money, and stress. Before you do anything, when you get the IRS letter, do not panic. Read it and then ask yourself, what tax year is IRS talking about? What does IRS think happened? Do you agree? What are they asking you to do? When must you respond by? Take a few minutes now so that those huge problems in the future could be avoided. Just because IRS sent you a letter does not mean you are in trouble, but ignoring will mean that the trouble becomes huge. Don't ignore the IRS letter, IRS notice, IRS communication. Respond as early as you can. The IRS correspondence generally falls into 6 categories. Money is owed. IRS needs information. IRS believes something doesn't match. IRS needs to verify your identity. IRS is examining your return. IRS is starting or continuing collection activity. Why do you think IRS uses these numbers, notice numbers, CP14, CP2000, LT11, 5071C, letter 1058? Think about it. Instead of a simple, dear taxpayer, you owe us money. The reason they do this, if you were to call our office and say, I got a letter from the IRS, we are going to ask you, what is that notice number? If you said CP14, we'd know right from that CP14 that balance is due. IRS says you owe them money. Then we are going to say which tax year is involved. We're going to ask you, who did your returns? We might ask you, do you really owe that money? Are you able to pay? And those would be answers that will help us work with you as partner towards the next steps. If you got a CP 2000 notice, basically IRS is saying that what you reported as income is not what is reported to the IRS as income. It is a possibility that IRS has received something else that is an income to you that you forgot to report or failed to report. It could be some settlement you got and you didn't think it was IRS. It could be interest income that is reported to the IRS and you thought it was $10. What's the point in reporting? The CP 2000 lets me know that there is some inconsistency in what you reported on your tax return and what IRS has received. The letter 11 is an important letter. It is the final collection notice. You have not paid, and the IRS may take more serious action next. So LT11 is important. The 5071C is about IRS wanting to verify your identity. IRS is going to tell you exactly what you need to do so that they can confirm your identity and protect your account. Then the letter 1058 is one that says they intend to levy from your wages, bank accounts, or other assets. Which of these letters will make you most likely to seek help? I would think all, but collection notices. Because collection notices do warn about possible further actions, and they also give you the opportunity to work with IRS to solve your IRS problem. Agreeing with the IRS is not the same as pay up all at once. You may have options. If you agree that you owe IRS, you have options to pay it all upfront if you have the money. Set up a payment plan or an installment agreement. Explore other collection options such as currently not collectible or an offer in compromise. You also have the option to correct your records. Really, the bottom line is if you understand what's going on, you evaluate, and then you act. Say you owe IRS $5,000. That's the IRS letter you received. You agree, yep, I do owe $5,000, but I don't have $5,000 to pay IRS. Do you ignore the letter? No, you act. You have understood, and now you evaluate what your options are. Upfront payment is out of the question. Maybe installment agreement, maybe CNC, the currently not collectible, or something else. Next IRS problem solvers will be talking about collection options. If you disagree with the IRS, that's not the same as ignoring the IRS. Read that notice. Identify what the IRS is saying. Gather your records and compare them with what IRS is saying. Follow all the instructions. Respond before the deadline. Keep copies of everything. Ask for help if you need. Disagreeing with the IRS is your right. Taking action is how you protect yourself. IRS sends me a letter saying, Rashmi, you owe $8,000 because, no, IRS says, Rashmi, you've received a 1099 of $8,000 that you failed to report with your last year's tax return. Rashmi does not recognize the employer. What should Rashmi do? First, read that notice carefully. It is a CP 2000 notice, right? CP 2000 says income doesn't match. As far as IRS is concerned, A. Rashmi Rangan was issued a 1099 or a W-2 for $8,000 that Rashmi Rangan did not report on her tax returns for 2025. By the way, I am Rashmi Rangan. What would you do if that happened to you? I am going to look at everything. It's difficult to prove a negative, but I will read that notice carefully, which tax year is involved. I'll gather all my records. I'm going to look at the W-2 or 1099. If that happens to be in California, and I can show that I lived in Delaware and never traveled anywhere outside Delaware, certainly not into California, I can gather those records, write a letter saying, IRS, I disagree because of the following reasons. I am timely responding, providing you documentation, and asking you to basically revisit, find out, gather more information from the employer that reported that I earned 8,000. Which address did they send it? So dispute. That is your right. IRS is not always right. They don't necessarily make mistakes, but they may be acting upon information they have received, and that information could very well be wrong. Taxpayers have a Bill of Rights, your core 10 rights. You have the right to be informed, to be heard, to challenge the IRS, to appeal their decisions, to privacy, to confidentiality, a right to be represented, hence the low income tax clinics, right to a fair tax system, right to quality service. You have a right to pay no more than what you owe, plus interest and penalties. Right to finality. Which of these rights did you already know that you hold? Knowing your rights is the first step. Exercising your right is the second step. And right to representation is where LITC's, the Low Income Tax Clinic, comes in. Deadlines matter. Missing deadlines means so much worse than you think. If you don't respond by the deadline in the first letter you received, or the second, or the third, you could lose appeal rights. You could lose an opportunity to be heard in tax court. You could basically accrue additional penalties. Collection actions can begin. Levies are taking from your bank account, your wages, Social Security can be levied, and a lien can be placed against your assets. So when you are selling your home, your car, your whatever, and there is a lien against it, that lien will have to be paid first before you pay anyone else. Act on time and protect your rights. The IRS letter will contain a date by which you must act. Actions could mean pay, respond, provide information, request appeal, take any other action. What happens if you don't respond? What happens if you don't respond? If you got a letter, say, notice of deficiency, the most important communication, and you ignored it, that gave you a deadline to go to tax court. You missed that deadline, and even if IRS is wrong by imposing $30,000 of taxes owed to you, you are stuck with it because you missed an important deadline. Fear leads to avoidance. Avoidance leads to missed deadlines. Missed deadlines, bigger problems. Knowing about this breaks this cycle. Never throw away IRS letters. Create a folder. The folder can be physical, on the computer, in the cloud. Keep every notice, tax returns, receipts, proof of mailing, any notes you have from phone calls. What could make record keeping easy for you or difficult? Know that it is actually true. In any instance, good records make stronger case, result in better outcome. Beware of scams. How many have you received a letter, a call, text, email, on social media? Act now or else you will be thrown in jail. I've gotten so many calls. This is the IRS. Yeah, 30 minutes to pay $2,400 or we will send the police to your door. What are some red flags? Do you think IRS has enough staffing to demand payment by gift cards and then having those gift cards converted into cash or payment that goes into the treasury? No. So if anyone wants a gift card from you in towards payment of any debt, that is a red flag. Unless you've committed a criminal act against the IRS, you can't be put in jail. Threat of imminent, immediate arrest should be a red flag. By the way, I always joke that IRS is single-handedly keeping the USPS service alive. IRS does not text you. They mail you. Their correspondence is always in letters, and each correspondence has a number, a CP notice, or a LTR, or something like that. Your first few contacts with the IRS will only be through paper mail, USPS. IRS is not going to demand payment today. There is a process. You have rights. Report scams. Don't be a victim. And by the way, IRS is not going to request sensitive information from you by email, text, or phone calls. They will obviously request sensitive information such as your prior returns, copy of your W-2s, 1099s, identity to prove, all via mail. Early help is better than emergency help. When you owe money and you know that you owe money, but you aren't able to make the entire payment in one lump sum, you may need some guidance or representation to figure other collection alternatives. You have a small business. You are being audited. Maybe not even a small business, but your return is being audited. You are concerned that you may not be able to provide the documentation needed, or you don't know what documentation you'll need to provide during the audit. You may need a low-income tax clinic. You received a levy notice. Levy means taking from your bank account your wages, your social security. You may need the low income tax clinic. You don't understand, even when it says CPX or whatever, you just cannot figure out what in the world is IRS trying to get at. You may need a low income tax clinic. You disagree with the IRS completely. You may need a low income tax clinic. You received a notice of deficiency. You need the low income tax clinic. If you got a letter from the IRS and there are many, many, many years that are at issue, you might need some help. Collection has begun. Legal representation is needed. You may need a low income tax clinic. 5 things to do. Open every IRS letter. Read it carefully. If you have a highlighter, highlight a few things. Highlight the notice number. Highlight the tax year. Highlight the due date by which you need to respond. Keep copies. Ask for help early. What is the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic? Low Income Taxpayer Clinic is a federal program. DCREC, let's see, is supported by the IRS, but is totally independent of the IRS. It also receives funding from numerous other sources. We are funded to provide representation, to provide education such as this session, to be a strong advocate, both systemic advocacy and individual advocacy. We are a legal service program focused on tax controversies. We are not a tax preparation service. In Delaware, we partner with the VITA site, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, Nehemiah Gateway CDC. We do not prepare taxes. We do not prepare items individual taxpayer identification number. While we don't do those two, when we are representing you and we need to amend your return in the course of our representation, or we need to obtain an item in the course of our representation, then we do address those. But we are a legal service provider. We are not a tax preparer. Here is your checklist. If you got a letter from the IRS, read that letter completely, check the deadline, compare with your tax return, gather your records, make copies, respond before the due date, keep proof that you mailed your response, ask for help if needed. If you remember nothing from today, remember, open, read, deadline, understand the problem, gather records, respond, keep copies, get help. Number one, open that letter. All right, here are a few quick scenarios. I owe $2,400. What should you do? Open the letter, check the deadline, compare it with your return, gather your records, ask for help. If you agree that, yeah, you do owe $2,400, that's different. But the IRS letter says you owe $2,400 because additional income was reported and that income you didn't earn, then you know that you have a different path to take. So read that letter, check the deadline, compare your tax returns, and then gather records. IRS says, I forgot income, that $8,000 of income, CP 2000 notice. Your first thing is, do you agree with it or disagree with it? If you agree, then you can amend your returns. If you disagree, then you provide documentation. Then you decide, what records do I need to check, right? The IRS is powerful, but you, the taxpayer, has rights. Understanding your options is the first step towards solving the problem. IRS is powerful, but taxpayer is not powerless. You may not have questions, or you may have lots of questions. I hope you walk away knowing that IRS communicates with you through the Postal Service on a form letter. The letter has a number, the tax year, deadline, and action that IRS is going to take unless you do something about it. Our low income tax clinic is available by text. You will need to text our tax attorney if you have a problem. But before that, you may want to leave a message for me at 302 298 3250. My name is Rashmi Rangan. Thank you so much.